The gunshot shattered the church bell's echo as Magdalena Crow pressed her back against the saloon's weathered wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. 3 shadows moved in the moonlight across Main Street, her spurs jingling a death song she'd been hearing in her nightmares for weeks. "There she is," growled the tallest figure, his voice carrying the promise of violence that had driven her from Denver. To this godforsaken corner of Colorado territory, she clutched the leather satchel tighter, the one containing documents that could hang half the territorial legislature and destroy the railroad baron who'd murdered her father. The same documents that had put a $1,000 bounty on her head. "Miss, you look like you could use some company." The voice came from behind. Her, smooth as aged whiskey, and twice as dangerous. She spun to face a man stepping out of the shadows, his hand resting casually on the pearl handle of his Colt, even in the dim light. She could see the sharp angles of his face, the way his dark eyes assessed the 3 men across the street with the calm of someone who'd faced death before and walked away whistling. "Kestrel Faulkner," he said, tipping his hat. "And unless I'm mistaken, those gentlemen aren't here for a friendly chat." "They're here to kill me," she whispered, surprised by her own honesty. His smile was wolfish. "Well, then I'd better walk you home." The bounty hunters had spotted them now. The letter-scarred mountain of a man she knew as Viper Donovan stepped into the street, his 2 companions flanking him like hungry wolves. "Stand aside, stranger," Viper called out. "This ain't your fight." Kestrel's response was to shift slightly, positioning himself between Magdalena and the killers. "Funny thing about fights," he drawled, his fingers flexing near his weapon. "They have a way of becoming personal real quick." Magdalena felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. This stranger, this Kestrel Faulkner, stood like a barrier between her and certain death. And she found herself studying the strong line of his jaw, the confident set of his shoulders. There was something about him that made her want to believe in heroes again. "You're making a mistake," she whispered. "Urgently, they'll kill you too." "Ma'am," Kestrel said without taking his eyes off the approaching men, "I've been making mistakes my whole life. This one feels different." The wind picked up, sending tumbleweeds skittering down the empty street like omens. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The 3 bounty hunters spread out, their intentions clear as daylight. Viper Donovan's hand moved toward his gun. "Last chance, stranger. Walk away." Kestrel's smile widened. "I already told the lady I'd walk her home. Where I come from, a man keeps his word." The silence stretched taut as a bowstring, and Magdalena realized she was holding her breath, watching this mysterious stranger who'd appeared like an answer to a prayer she'd been afraid to whisper. Then Viper's hand flashed downward, and the night exploded into gunfire. Kestrel's Colt cleared leather faster than lightning, the muzzle flash illuminating his face in stark relief as his bullet found Viper's shoulder, spinning the big man sideways. Magdalena dove behind a water trough as the other 2 bounty hunters opened fire, their shots splintering wood and ringing off metal in the chaotic symphony of a street fight. "This way," Kestrel shouted, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the narrow alley between the mercantile and the barber shop. His palm was warm and calloused, strong fingers intertwining with hers as they ran through the shadows. Bullets whistling past their heads. Behind them, Viper's roar of rage echoed off the buildings. 10,000 to whoever brings me her head."
Ow!
The bounty had just increased tenfold. Magdalena's stomach lurched as she realized what that meant. Half the territory would be hunting her. By sunrise, Kestrel led her through a maze of back alleys, past chicken coops and outhouses, his knowledge of the town's layout suggesting he'd been here longer than his stranger's introduction implied. They finally stopped behind the livery stable, both breathing hard. 10,000, she gasped. "Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into?" He was reloading his revolver with practiced efficiency, his eyes scanning the shadows for pursuit. "I'm starting to get the picture." "What did you do, Rob? The First National? Worse?" She opened the satchel enough to show him the documents inside. "I have proof that Governor Ashworth and the Colorado Pacific Railroad have been stealing land from homesteaders, murder, fraud, bribery, it's all in here. My father was going to expose them." As her throat tightened, "They threw him off the Continental Bridge 3 weeks ago. Made it look like suicide." Kestrel's jaw clenched, and for a moment his easygoing facade cracked, revealing something harder underneath. Something that made her pulse quicken in an entirely different way. Now they want to silence you too. The territorial capital is 3 days' ride north. If I can get these documents to the federal marshal there, you'll never make it alone. His voice was matter of fact, but when he looked at her, she saw something that made her breath catch. Lucky for you, I was heading that direction anyway. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Maybe that's exactly why. He holstered his weapon and moved closer, close enough that she could smell leather and gunpowder and something uniquely him. Besides, any woman who can make Viper Donovan that angry must be worth knowing. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made them both freeze. Through a gap in the stable's wall, they could see torches moving through the streets, voices calling out instructions. The hunt was organized now, systematic. We need horses, Kestrel whispered. The stable will be watched. He was thinking ahead of her, his mind working like a seasoned outlaw's. But I know another way. He led her to a loose board in the stable's back wall, prying it aside to reveal an opening just wide enough for them to slip. Through, inside, the horses snorted nervously at the commotion outside. Take the bay mare, he whispered, already saddling a black stallion. She's got heart. As Magdalena struggled with her saddle, Kestrel moved behind her, his hands covering hers to help with the cinch. The simple contact sent electricity racing up her arms, and she found herself leaning back against his chest for just a moment, drawing strength from his solid presence. We're going to make it, he murmured against her ear, his breath warm on her neck, I promise. The stable doors exploded inward, and Viper Donovan stood silhouetted against the torchlight, his arm in a makeshift sling, murder in his eyes. End of the road, Viper snarled, his good hand steady on his rifle. Behind him, a dozen men fanned out, blocking every exit. The torchlight danced across their faces, revealing greed and bloodlust in equal measure. Kestrel stepped in front of Magdalena, his hand moving to his gun, but the odds were impossible. Even he couldn't outdraw 12 men. Smart boy, Viper sneered. Now, step aside. This is between me and the lady. Afraid I can't do that. Kestrel's voice remained calm, but Magdalena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he calculated angles and distances like a chess player contemplating his final moves. That's when she noticed it, the way his left hand was moving. Subtle gestures that looked like nervous fidgeting, but weren't random at all. He was using some kind of sign language, communicating with someone she couldn't see. The explosion came from the stables far, and as a charge of dynamite blew a hole in the wall. In the chaos of falling timber and panicked horses, 3 more men burst through, not bounty hunters, but allies. Cowboys by their look, faces hard with loyalty and purpose. It would be good, Kess, one of them shouted. Laying down covering fire, Kestrel grabbed Magdalena around the waist and literally threw her onto the bay mare before vaulting onto his stallion. He yelled, spurring his mount toward the new opening as bullets filled the air around them. They thundered through the gap in the wall and into the night, Kestrel's men covering their retreat. The wind whipped Magdalena's hair as they galloped across the prairie, the lights of town falling away behind them. Only when they'd put several miles between themselves and pursuit did Kestrel finally slow their pace. His 3 companions materialized out of the darkness lane, dangerous men who looked at her with curiosity rather than hostility. Boys, meet Magdalena Crow, Kestrel said, his breathing still elevated from the chase. Magdalena, these are my business partners. Flint Morrison, Cherokee Bill, and the ugly one there is Joaquin Santos. Business partners? She asked, suddenly wary. Flint, a weathered man with steel-gray eyes, chuckled. Ma'am, we're what you might call freelance law enforcement. We take contracts the territorial marshals can't or won't handle. You're bounty hunters. Her voice went flat. We prefer problem solvers, Cherokee Bill said with a grin. He was younger than the others, with sharp features that suggested his name wasn't just for show. Magdalena's hand moved toward the pocket where she kept her derringer. How much is Ashworth paying you? Easy there, Wildcat, Kestrel said, his horse moving closer to hers. If we wanted you dead, you'd already be buzzard food. We're working for your father. My father's dead. Yeah, but he hired us before he died, paid us to keep you safe and help you get those documents to Santa Fe. Kestrel's expression softened. Josiah Crow was a good man. He knew they were coming for him, so he made arrangements. Tears stung her eyes. Even in death, her father had been trying to protect her. You've been watching me this whole time? Someone had to. Viper and his boys have been circling like vultures for weeks. The weight of it hit her, the loneliness she'd felt, the desperate isolation as her world crumbled around her. She hadn't been alone at all. This mysterious man and his companions had been her guardian angels, and she'd been too scared to see it. "Thank you," she whispered, the words inadequate for what they'd done, what they were risking. Kestrel reached over and touched her hand briefly. "Don't thank me yet. We've got 3 days of hard riding ahead, and every gun for hire in the territory will be looking for us. Things are about to get interesting." In the distance, they could see torches spreading out from town like fire across dry grass. By dawn, they were deep in the Badlands, following a trail that existed more in Kestrel's memory than on any map. The landscape was harsh, and beautiful red rock formations jutting from the earth like ancient sentinels. Mesas stretched. Against a sky that promised another scorching day, Magdalena rode beside Kestrel, studying his profile as he scanned the horizon. There was more to him than the easy charm he'd shown in town. She'd seen the way his men looked at him, the unquestioning loyalty in their eyes. Whatever his past, he'd earned their respect the hard way. "You never answered my question last night," she said as they watered the horses at a hidden spring. "Which one? Why you're really helping me. My father's payment couldn't have been enough to risk your lives like this." Kestrel was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice held an edge of old pain. "Governor Ashworth and his railroad friends killed my brother 2 years ago. Different scheme, same methods. Nathan was trying to organize the cattle ranchers against a land grab when he had an accident with his horse, his hands clenched into fists. Broke his neck, they said. Terrible tragedy. You think it was murder? I know it was murder. Just like I know those documents in your satchel might be the key to proving it." The pieces clicked together in her mind. "You're not just protecting me. You're using me to get to them." Started. That way, he admitted, his eyes meeting hers. But things change. The simple honesty in his voice made her heart skip. Before she could respond, Cherokee Bill's whistle echoed across the rocks, their signal for danger. "Riders coming fast," Flint called out quietly. "It's maybe 20, spread in a search line." They were in a natural depression surrounded by red rocks, but it wouldn't hide them for long. Kestrel studied the terrain with tactical precision, his mind working through options. "There," he said, pointing to a narrow canyon cutting deeper into the Badlands. "It's risky, but we can lose them in the maze, or get trapped," Joaquin muttered. "Better than fighting 22-4 odds in open ground." They rode hard into the canyon, the walls closing around them like stone jaws. The passage twisted and branched, creating a labyrinth that could hide them or become their tomb. Behind them, the sound of pursuit echoed off the walls, distorted and multiplied until it seemed like an army was chasing them. At a narrow fork, Kestrel made a decision that surprised them all. "Magdalena, you go with Cherokee Bill through the left passage. There's an old mining camp about 5 miles up. Wait for us there. I'm not leaving you. You are." His voice brooked no argument. "Those documents are more important than any of us. If we don't make it back, Cherokee Bill will get you to Santa Fe." Kestrel, he leaned over and kissed her, hard and desperate, and full of things he couldn't say. When they broke apart, she could see her own emotions reflected in his eyes. Desire mixed with fear. Hope tangled with desperation. "Go," he whispered. "In Magdalena, when this is over, I want to show you what a proper courtship looks like." Cherokee Bill was already leading her horse away, and she had no choice but to follow. Looking back over her shoulder, as Kestrel and his men disappeared into the maze of stone, the sound of gunfire echoed through the canyon. 15 minutes later, sharp cracks that spoke of close combat and desperate odds. Magdalena pulled up short, every instinct screaming at her to go back, to help. To fight beside the man who'd kissed her like he was memorizing the taste of her lips. "Keep riding, Cherokee," Bill said grimly. "Nothing we can do now, but trust they'll find a way out." But as they climbed toward the abandoned mining camp,
The gunfire faded to silence.
and Magdalena felt her heart breaking with each step that took her further from the man she was falling in love with. The mining camp was a collection of rotting buildings clinging to the mountainside like broken teeth. Magdalena paced the length of the largest shack, the documents clutched against her chest, while Cherokee Bill kept watch from the window. "They should be here by now," she said for the 10th time. "Kess knows these mountains better than anyone. If there's a way out, he'll find it." But doubt was creeping into his voice too. They'd been waiting 3 hours, and the silence from the canyons below was deafening. "I should have stayed with him and gotten him killed worrying about you instead of focusing on the fight." Cherokee Bill's tone was gentle but firm. He made the right call. Horses whinny from outside made them both freeze. Cherokee Bill's gun was in his hand instantly. But the voice that called out made Magdalena's heart leap. "Easy there, young buck. It's just us old fools." Flint and Joaquin rode into the camp, their clothes torn and bloody, but their eyes bright with victory. Behind them, Kestrel sat his horse with the easy grace of a man who'd just cheated death again. Magdalena ran to him before he could dismount. He caught her in his arms, spinning her around as relief flooded through them both. "I heard the shooting." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Takes more than a few bounty hunters to put me in the ground," he murmured against her hair. But she could feel the tremor in his hands, the way he held her just a little too tight. "What happened down there? Led them on a chase through every dead end and box canyon in the territory?" Joaquin said with a grin. "Half of them are still wandering around down there looking for a way out." "The other half?" Cherokee Bill asked. Flint's expression darkened. "Won't be bothering anyone anymore." They'd bought time, but Magdalena knew it wouldn't last. More hunters would come, and Governor Ashworth's resources seemed limitless. "We need to change tactics," Kestrel said, seeming to read her thoughts. "They're expecting us to run straight for Santa Fe, so we don't. What are you proposing?"
Heirs.
"A territorial judge and Silverton Judge Cornelius Hartwell. He's one of the few honest men left in Colorado territory. If we can get those documents to him, he can issue federal warrants that even Ashworth can't ignore." "Silverton's a week's ride east," Flint pointed out, "through some of the worst country in the territory, which is exactly why they won't expect." Kestrel's smile was sharp as a blade. "Besides, I know a shortcut." That night, as they camped in a cave high above the valley floor, Magdalena found herself alone with Kestrel, while the others kept watch. The fire cast dancing shadows on the stone walls, creating an intimate pocket of warmth in the vast darkness. "Me about Nathan," she said quietly. Kestrel was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames. "He was everything I'm not. Patient, thoughtful, believed in doing things the right way. While I was off gambling and gunfighting, he was building something real, a ranch, a future, a family. You loved him. He was the best of us. And they killed him for trying to protect his neighbors." His voice was thick with old grief and fresh rage. "I've been hunting his killers for 2 years, following cold trails and dead ends. Then your father showed up with those documents, and suddenly I had a chance for real justice." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Justice for Nathan, justice for my father, justice for all of them." "And what about after?" he asked, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "When the shooting's done and the dust settles, what then?" The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Magdalena looked into his eyes and saw her own hope reflected there, the dream of a life beyond running and hiding, of mornings without looking over their shoulders, of love that could grow in peace instead of blooming in the shadow of violence. "Then we find out who we are when we're not afraid," she whispered. He leaned forward and kissed her again, softer this time, full of promises and possibilities. The attack came at dawn, just as they broke camp for the final push to Silverton. Magdalena was checking her saddle when the first shot rang out, the bullet splintering the rock inches from her head. Viper Donovan had found them. "How many?" Kestrel shouted, already returning fire. "Too many." Flint's rifle cracked repeatedly as he tried to pin down the attackers. Scattered among the rocks above their position, they were trapped in the cave mouth, caught between the stone wall behind them and at least 15 guns ahead. Viper had learned from his mistakes, bringing overwhelming force and cutting off their escape routes. "The mine shaft," Cherokee Bill called out, pointing to a dark opening deeper in the cave. "It has to come out somewhere, or it's a death trap," Joaquin muttered. But he was already gathering their supplies. Bullets whined off the cave walls as they retreated deeper into the mountain, following a tunnel that plunged into absolute darkness. Their torch cast eerie shadows on the walls, and somewhere ahead, water dripped with maddening regularity. "This is insane," Magdalena whispered as they stumbled through the narrow passage. "Sanity's overrated," Kestrel replied, but she could hear the strain in his voice. They all knew this could be a dead end, literally. The tunnel branched and twisted, and soon they were completely lost in the mountain's bowels. Behind them, the sound of pursuit echoed through the passages, distorted and multiplied, until it sounded like an army was following them through the earth. Then Kestrel stopped so suddenly that Magdalena bumped into him. "What is it? Listen." Held her breath and heard it, the faint sound of wind moving through rock. Fresh air, which meant another opening. They followed the breeze through increasingly narrow passages. Sometimes crawling on their hands and knees, the documents pressed against Magdalena's chest like a prayer, just when she thought they'd die. In the darkness, they emerged onto a ledge high on the mountain's far side. Below them spread the valley that held Silverton. The town, looking like a child's toy in the distance. But between them and safety lay a treacherous descent down a nearly vertical rock face. "I can't," Magdalena said, looking down at the dizzying drop. "Yes, you can." Kestrel's hands were gentle but firm as he turned her to face him. "We've come too far to quit now. Your father didn't die so you could give up 50 feet from victory." She saw the faith in his eyes, the absolute conviction that she was stronger than her fear. Somehow that made all the difference. The descent was a nightmare of loose rock and heart-stopping moments, but they made it to the valley floor as the sun reached its zenith. Silverton was just visible through the heat haze when Cherokee Bill spotted the dust cloud behind them. "They found another way down," he said grimly. "How many?" "Enough." They rode hard for the town, their horses lathered with sweat and foam, but their pursuers were gaining ground. Magdalena could see individual riders now, Viper Donovan in the lead, his face twisted with murderous determination. The first buildings of Silverton rose around them like a promise of sanctuary. The courthouse sat in the center of town, a solid brick building that looked like salvation itself. But as they pulled up at the courthouse steps, Magdalena's heart sank. The building was dark, its windows shuttered. A sign on the door read, "Judge. Hartwell Circuit Court return Tuesday next." "Today's Thursday," Flint said quietly. The thunder of hooves was getting closer. Viper and his men would be here within minutes. "The marshal's office," Kestrel said desperately. "Maybe Marshall's." "Been bought?" Cherokee Bill interrupted. "Saw him talking to one of Ashworth's men yesterday in Durango. They were trapped. After everything they'd endured, they were going to die on the courthouse steps with justice just beyond their reach." That's when Magdalena noticed the other figure standing in the courthouse doorway, an elderly man in a black suit, his white hair gleaming in the afternoon sun. "Judge Hartwell," she breathed. "You're supposed to be on circuit." The old man smiled. "Got word there might be some urgent business requiring my attention. Sometimes justice can't wait for schedules." "Young lady,"